Hi, guys. Welcome back to episode 2 of season 3 of Personal Trainers Who Care. I'm actually joined here today by Etienne Asselin. He is the owner and CEO of
Yep.
the Exercise Mechanic and also a PT. So I actually met him because we did a course at Freeform and he taught us actually pretty much right when I started at Freeform. He's a biomechanics guy, he's a pain guy, rehab guy. So we're going to focus most of our conversation on that today, but we're going to get to know him and I get to pick his brain a bit. So yeah, I'm going to let him introduce himself, talk about the exercise mechanic a little bit, and just send it off.
Perfect.
Thank you for coming on
Thanks
today.
for having me. This is a really beautiful studio. I'm really happy to be
I
here.
know, it's great. It's not ours, but
It's okay. It's okay.
might as well be.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about the exercise mechanic. How'd you start it? How long have you been in the industry, the business?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Excuse me. So I think, talking about the I guess the origin story of the exercise mechanic requires that we first kind of talk about the beginning of my career. So I started as a trainer in 2009. I had no idea what I wanted to do outside of high school. And I figured I went into police foundations. Through that program, I had the opportunity to train some of my colleagues for police testing, and I thought that was pretty rad. So I got my personal training certificate and started as a trainer with Good Life back in the day. And I really quickly fell in love with the profession because of how tangible and like measurable the changes are that you have in people's lives. Like it's really, you can see the influence that you have, and it's intoxicating.
Yeah, it's true.
And I guess like the other side of that is that when things don't work, it really bothered me. So I would have clients that would ask me questions about, or they'd have an objective of, they're trying to, whether it be like lose fat, gain muscle, decrease pain, increase flexibility. And I had these protocols of what I thought I had to do to help them. Sometimes they would work and sometimes they didn't. And my, I guess, journey of professional progression has been largely, at least initially, spurred forward by frustration. Because I was like, why the heck isn't this stuff working? This person has invested X amount of money. They've trusted me with this outcome, and I'm not able to deliver on it. And that really bothered me. And so that led me down various paths where I was looking to try to make sense of how the human body works and how we can nudge it in a direction that's favorable as defined by a client. And so I started kind of going down the path of muscle activation techniques, which I think you've heard of because Jules back in the day, he did that. MAT led me to do this other program called RTS. And there's a lot of acronyms here. So
Yeah, okay.
RTS is called Resistance Training Specialist, which is an amazing program founded by Tom Purvis in the States. So I did that program. That blew my mind wide open. That led to the pursuit of like neuroscience, pain neuroscience, trauma, et cetera. And it's just been kind of like, you take one course, you learn some things, and then you realize that there are gaps, and then you look to fill those gaps, and you learn some more stuff, but you realize there's different gaps, and you just kind of keep pursuing that gap, I guess I could say. And through that process, bringing it back to like, what is the exercise mechanic? Through that process, I realized that there are certain buckets of information that are really important for trainers to know to be able to help people. The first bucket is the biomechanical bucket, which is, understanding anatomy, understanding force application, because fundamentally we manipulate the body. So we manipulate anatomy and we impose force on the body through exercise. And I believe that shouldn't be done accidentally. I think that there's a lot of power in it being intentional.
Yes.
And so the biomechanical bucket is a really important one. The second really enormous bucket is the bucket of pain neuroscience, because A, pain is absolutely unavoidable in life. B, a lot of clients come to us with rehabilitation and or pain objectives, like I want to hurt less, I want to feel better on a day-to-day basis, I want my back to be less stiff, I want to decrease injury risk, what have you. And there's also really big, implications flowing outwards from misunderstandings about pain and rehab that affect program design choices. And we can maybe talk about some of that later today if you'd like.
Yeah, for sure.
But like the pain neuroscience bucket is A, I think really fascinating, and B, it has enormous ripple effects to program designed for hypertrophy, fat loss, and also, of course, rehab.
Yeah.
And then the third big category is psychology. So how can we move people to action? How can we connect with our clients? How can we understand how they tick so as to better help them, so as to better influence them? So those are the three main buckets that we cover as an organization, as a means of helping trainers be more impactful with the work they do with their clients.
Right. So pain.
We're
And the
testing you
neuroscience side
here.
of it,
Yeah.
the biomechanics side of
Yeah.
it, and the third one you said was psychology.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of an integration for clients and trainers to basically understand how all those factors are sort of working together and influencing each other and changing outcomes and trying to use all those three buckets to manipulate outcomes.
100%. Yeah, and better understanding not just having memorized protocols that you're using, but better understanding like the layers and the components of those decisions,
Right.
so that you can be more strategic. So an example would be like, let's say you're doing a lat pull down. Why might you opt for like I'm thinking of like a free motion lat pull down where you're pulling kind of in the frontal plane, in contrast to a machine with a fixed bar that's kind of pulling not frontal, but kind of like sagittal-ish, kind of, in this kind of direction. Like,
Right.
why
Yeah.
might you choose that? And how
Right,
are they
exactly.
and how are they different? And so, because technically on paper they're both a lateral raise, but how might they be different when it comes to how they stimulate the dorsal musculature? So
Right.
the details really matter in our opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for people who might not know, frontal plane means pulling basically
Kind of like this.
this
Yeah,
way.
correct. Yeah.
And then sagittal is more front to back. So it's like, maybe your trainer has given you a bunch of different back exercises, and sometimes they're a little bit more in front of your body, sometimes they're right up above, sometimes they're going this way, and sometimes they're single arm, sometimes they're double arm. And part of what Etienne does, what his team does, and what we do as personal trainers is sort of decide why, when, for whom, how often, and how much weight are we using to accomplish what goal. So he basically helps to get into the nitty gritty of why are we doing what we are doing, for what purpose, and will it work? Is that in line with what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, 100%. And through understanding the kind of underlying components of exercises and what they offer, you can just be more strategic in exactly which one you're going to select for a given client. And it really it unlocks customization. So that way, and that customization is intentional in contrast to accidental or arbitrary.
Puts the personal and personal.
That's it. I mean, it's
training.
funny. It's a cliche, right? People say that all the time, but
Yeah.
it's a cliche for a reason,
Yes, exactly. Because, there's different reasons why you might choose different things. Everyone has, we have the same body, we have the same organs, we have the same things, but people have different structures, people have different injuries,
100%.
different histories, different conditioning, different metabolisms, different goals, different personalities, right? Like someone might hate an exercise and you're not going to put it in there just because you think that their back muscle should be bigger in this direction.
100%.
So it's all about, and it also is so client-centered because it goes back to the fact that you are serving the client and you are giving them what they want, but then also sort of trying to influence that with what you might think that they need, but trying to center their desires and their goals above all else. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of goal setting, how you come about that, and how that interacts with your training decisions, and how you think clients should go about creating goals when they don't even know what their goals should be? Because it's like I get this question all the time. People are like, "What should I be doing in the gym? What should I be doing?" If I don't know if I'm a personal trainer, they're like, "Oh, what should I be doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do you want?"
Yeah.
How do you approach that, and how do you think that clients themselves should look inwards to find that answer?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think, I go about it a very similar way to what you just highlighted. If a client, because I do work with some clients in person as well as online. If a client was like, "What should I do?" I would reflect that right back to them, and I'd be like, I would ask them probing questions of like, what are perhaps some of their desires? Let's take the should out of it. It's a funny kind of turn of phrase, but stop shoulding all over yourself.
No, it's
And
true.
so let's take the should out of it. Like, this is
Yeah.
your life. How would you like to live it?
Yeah.
If people aren't sure necessarily, if we think about kind of when it comes to goal setting, I think we could likely break it down into two different categories. You have what people would call away from goals and towards goals. A towards goal might be, I want to run a half marathon. An away from goal would be like, I want to not be out of shape. I want to not feel breathlessness. So you're looking to run away, pun intended, you're looking to run away from breathlessness, not
Yeah.
necessarily towards doing a half marathon.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
if people aren't sure necessarily what they want to move towards, I look at the other side. I'll ask them, like, what is it about your current physical capacity that you find fundamentally unpleasant right now? And then that sheds light on perhaps the adaptations and the outcomes that they would like to see shift in their life, and we would likely use those as an initial starting point. And then in addition to that, I think it is also important to have reassessments, scheduled. So for instance, with initial clients that I work with, I always start with a 6-week period. So we go 6 weeks. If it's worth it after the initial assessment, we do 6 weeks together. We reassess at like week 5-ish. Then we talk about whether or not we're going to be continuing to work together, because, adaptations in the body, they take time, they take repeated exposure. You don't get fit overnight.
Yeah.
So looking at the long game is really important. So I would say
Yeah.
initially, if people aren't sure necessarily what to do, if you're not sure what you want to move towards, I would say examine what you find unpleasant in life and move away from that. And then as you move forward through the journey, as you learn more about yourself, it's important to have those moments to like take pause, take stock, reflect, look inward, and then
Yeah.
potentially set new goals.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's something I say all the time with clients too. It's like so many, like if you don't know right now, you don't need to, but like, especially because goals are so emergent. Like as time goes
Yeah.
on, then you realize, no, I want to work on this thing, or, something changes in your life and I want to work on this thing. But the thing that stays constant is that you're always working on something, whether it's maintenance or, actively pushing towards something. But the common denominator is that you are working. You are pushing towards better metabolic health, better strength, more muscle. I guess to give you a should question, what should people do? What do you think, in your opinion, is a baseline that everyone should be doing? Because, we could go along, what's recommended from, Health Canada. We could go along with what some wellness guru says.
Sure.
We could go along with, the general zeitgeist, or what people think is popular right now, or the body type that people want right now. What do you think is a non-negotiable? Both for you and for
Sure.
general
I mean, I
public,
think if we zoom out, the non-negotiable is that people should find some kind of physical activity that they can do. The thing that really makes this challenging is like access. So socioeconomic differences, person to person, makes it really difficult to have like blanket generalizations of like everyone should exercise or do this kind of thing or have this kind of objective.
Definitely.
I find it's a hard question to answer for those reasons.
For sure.
But what I would say is I think that, people should endeavor to move every day. And that includes people like, even if you have disabilities, I have a lot of clients with physical disabilities. I've worked with clients that are not paraplegic, but like are relatively wheelchair bound. And we can find creative ways to challenge them as a means of improving their physiological health. So like in that instance of someone who's, let's say, paralyzed waist down, getting them seated on a machine where they do this and they get their heart rate up is awesome. And
Yeah.
so it's about like playing the cards that you have. But I would say that
Yeah.
like getting people moving ideally on a daily basis, not being purely sedentary, would be really good for physiological health. And then also, if we can, having moments of strenuous activity, because strenuous activity seems like it just disproportionately nudges the needle in the direction of capital H health,
Yeah.
more so than lower intensity or moderate intensity work.
Yes.
So if we can incorporate some higher intensity stuff, whatever that looks like, and as much lower intensity stuff into someone's life, I think that would be really great. That would probably be my answer.
Yeah.
And, whether or not that looks like for some people, if that looks like dance, for some people running, for others, cross-country skiing, because we have Gatineau Park, just in our backyard,
Yeah.
hiking, lifting weights, all of that stuff is great, then the other thing that I'll say on that, I'm realizing this is a very unsatisfactory and unsatisfying answer.
Oh, I mean, and it's always like
But
that. It's always like, oh, it depends what you want.
yeah, and also,
Yeah.
like you mentioned actually at the
What you
beginning of
can do.
today, not only what you can do, but also what do you like? Because adherence is the greatest predictor of success. You could exercise really intensely for a month. I would much rather that you not do that, and then you exercise like low to moderate intensity over the course of a year or years. I would
Yeah.
much rather that you do something like, if you love dance, we use that as an example, that you go hard with dancing in contrast to going kind of moderately hard with resistance training and you hate your life when you're doing it, and that it ends up being
Yes.
an unsustainable practice. So
Yeah.
I think that like those are all, how would I say, the industry as a whole, trainers and then also clients tend to lose the forest for the trees, in the sense that we will look at something that is objectively really good for them, but we don't ask ourselves follow-up questions of, well, what's the likelihood that I'll actually be able to implement this in my life?
Yeah.
Because it's the repeated implementation, like I've mentioned, I feel like too often already since the
Oh,
beginning of
it's
today, that's going to lead to positive outcomes for folks. So
yeah.
yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
how I
it's
would
like
work through
it's
it.
like it's not like we're trying to say like you need to do sprinting once a week and then also have your 20 minutes of this and then also make sure that you're also doing 3 sessions of strength training. It's like, maybe if you have all the time in the world, you have no kids, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Yeah, that's great, but if you can fit in some sort of strenuous exercise, that's what you would put in the number one spot if that is something that you are interested in.
And if it's
And if you
sustainable.
can adhere to
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yes, if that's sustainable,
Yeah.
which is the number one thing, which is also so interesting. And I was considering of tacking this sort of at the end of our chat, but it's relevant now. So there's so many health and fitness trends that are going on right now where people are like, oh, like especially with women,
Yeah.
we should go low weight, high reps. There's the Pilates trends right now. There's yoga. Oh, I don't want to be big and bulky. I don't want to be stressing my body out too much. My stress hormones are too high. I'm metabolically impaired, so I shouldn't be doing this. It's like there's so much fear and fear mongering about moving, weight training, and strenuous exercise in general when it comes to fear around pain, but also just fear around what you could be doing to your body, whether you're ready to do strenuous exercise. Who is strenuous exercise for? And what's your take on that? Like all those trends? That's a loaded question.
Yeah. So if we start from perhaps we start from the top when it comes to, it seems like the part one was revolving around perhaps misinformation with regarding specifically to fitness trends for women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like one of the largest. So I actually don't know if this is it. So let me back up. It seems like currently one of the fitness trends, which is train by your cycle.
True.
It seems like there's less validity to that than we previously thought. And what I mean by that, and I'll back up, is that it doesn't seem like there's one way across the board for all women of how to structure your training around the female, menstrual cycle. That doesn't seem to be true. What is true, however, is that each person is going to have a slightly different cycle, different intensities, et cetera, and it's going to affect them in different ways. And it would be wise to know how you respond and how you feel, and maybe to make training decisions based off of that. But there isn't one way that women need to train differently as an extension of their menstrual cycle. That seems to be true. And what's interesting is if we take that principle, if we take the menstrual cycle thing out of it just for a moment, and we look at the overarching theme, which is if you feel like shit, change your training, right?
Yeah.
If you feel good,
Yeah.
train harder, right?
doing that, yeah.
Similar with like, I don't know, in finances, if you have more money to invest, you invest more. If you have less, you invest less. That principle applies to all human beings on the planet. So
Yeah.
it's actually a general training recommendation. It's just that it's going to manifest a little bit differently person to person, and women have the added the extra layer of their menstrual cycle that they need to kind of take into account or perhaps be sensitive to when it comes to
Yeah.
making training decisions. That seems to be one thing that currently right now is really hot. People are talking about it a lot. There's been a lot of trends and misinformation seemingly regarding that there's one way to do things. You need to bring things down in certain phases and bring things up in others. That doesn't seem to be true.
Yeah, like be in different phases of your cycle.
Correct.
You mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
The whole cycle syncing thing is definitely confusing, and then also adds a layer when you talk about like metabolic issues or things like PCOS or endometriosis, other things that women struggle with that will affect their energy levels. And I think, in my opinion, what it goes back to, let me know if you agree, is the just like what are you able to do and what are you actually able to recover from? What do you want, and does that match up with what you can actually recover from? And or how quickly are you going to be able to accomplish that? Like, is it just like can you go at the same rate as someone who's more metabolically healthy than you? Does that mean that you should drop all of your intense exercise? Probably not. Maybe you might need to for a little
Yeah.
while, but
I totally agree
I
for
think
what it's worth.
centering the recovery side of things and centering that and in general centering. Actually, this is interesting. Sort of being in tune with your body and your recovery levels, but not being completely beholden to them because sometimes
Yeah.
your body will lie to you, or sometimes you think that you're super tired, you get a workout in and you feel great after, or sometimes getting a workout in is the worst thing that you can do because you're so fatigued that you're pouring from an empty cup. So how
Sure.
do you suggest that people push forward and pull back?
Yeah, I mean, this is really hard. And in the rehab world, we call this the expose or protect debate, which is like when someone hurts, do you expose and do graded exposure, or do you protect and you decrease stressors as a means of helping the area calm down? And that kind of this debate and this kind of this tension, because both are necessary at different places, but how do you know when you're going to use which strategy or not? I do have a bias here. My
Okay.
bias is I think that there's a 51-49. We have these two categories between like push versus dial back and kind of take it easy on yourself. My bias is 51% leaning towards push yourself,
Push.
and then the 49 is take it easy. I would much rather that people have a slight tendency to push and to question how they're feeling and to be curious, like, oh, I wonder if I could do this, than that they have a bias and a knee-jerk assumption of like, I'm not feeling it, so I'm not going to do anything. Because I think that is a problem, and not only like how would I say, it's a problem in the sense that like inactivity, inadequate or insufficient physical activity leads people down a very predictable path of weakness, compromised metabolic health with time, accelerated aging, loss of agency, et cetera. And so I think it's a really good thing to be like, listen, we know what are the predictable consequences of not doing enough. And so let's have a light leaning towards challenging ourselves and being curious about whether or not we can actually do something on a day-to-day basis. And it's possible that you'll overcook it. In fact, it's guaranteed you're going to overcook it at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And I think that is better than playing it safe all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
I
that
do
risk
agree.
is better than the other guaranteed risk.
Yeah, I do think I agree. And like, at least it's more data, more information, right? Like, where your limits are, especially at different times in your
And
life.
what I would say is most people have no friggin' idea where their limits are, right? Like in 2022, I decided to set myself a really big objective of signing up for a marathon in 2023. And people would be like, "Oh yeah, but you're a fit dude, so been working in the fitness industry, you're fine." False. I've always been a power athlete. I shied away from endurance sports because I profoundly sucked at them. Like I used to play competitive basketball, and I had really great skills with like ball handling, shooting, court sense, amazing, but I had no lungs. I had no legs. Like I couldn't keep up with people, even though I was really skilled. So like beginning of the game, I was excellent. And then in the latter half, I was completely useless because I just had no lungs. People could outwork me. And so 2022, I decided to set the goal of doing a marathon. I signed up for it, got a coach, committed to a year of training. And turns out I was completely wrong about my aerobic capacity. And turns out I actually love running. And I've done one like ultra endurance kind of trail thing so far when we were in Switzerland. I've got another one coming up next year in August in Quebec.
Nice.
And so by challenging the kind of assumptions that I'd made about myself, I realized that I was wrong. And I also realized that there's other things that I actually really enjoy. It's just that I sucked at them. So I do think that it is like we truly, the vast majority of the time, we actually don't know what we're capable of.
No.
And that's why, once again, I think it's really healthy and wise to have a light leaning towards, I'm going to not necessarily listen to how I'm feeling in the moment. I'm going to just do what I said I was going to do. And if I need to calibrate, I'll calibrate after. But take that first step.
And it's crazy too, because I think so much of it is tied to like a sense of identity and like some of our memories from childhood, even that are like, that have carried you into this, like you were a basketball player and, you know, you couldn't keep up with these guys. And suddenly now you have this thought that, you know, you're not an endurance athlete. And then that leads you to avoid that kind of stuff.
100%.
And I think, you know, challenging our identity and just realizing, okay, no, maybe the people who are good at that stuff, unless they're, you know, some freak of nature, like, you know, look at someone like Michael Phelps, like he has the kind of body that is great for swimming, but you don't think about, you know, how often they're showing up for that input or to get that output. Yeah, and just sort of challenging the identity and using, I guess, PT and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to figure out what can you actually do compared to just immediately giving up.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit more about the transformative power.
Yeah, I was just about to kind of go there. Yeah, 'cause I could see you're kind of teeing me up here.
I can feel it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, this is one of the reasons why I am committed to serving the fitness industry. So earlier when we were talking about what is the exercise mechanic, I was, oh yeah, we teach these three kind of major categories, but I didn't tell you why we teach those three categories specifically to fitness professionals. It's because personal training as an industry, because of the frequency at which we see our clients and also the relational depth that we foster with clients, like, I mean, you can have like really amazing friendships and like your clients can become extended family. That's happened to me countless times.
Yeah.
But because of the frequency and the relational depth, we have huge influence.
Yeah.
An amount of influence and amount of power that I think exceeds what most people experience through the totality of the remainder of their health team. Like if you look at the frequency at which one client will see their massage therapist, physio, chiro, osteo, in total doctor during a year, in comparison to the frequency at which they see just you, your impact in their life, just based off of the frequency piece, the potential you have is immense, absolutely immense.
Yeah.
And kind of coming back to the whole transformative part of personal training, it's, and I talked about this in a recent piece of content, which I think was perhaps why, you were creeping me a little bit. But we'll play this game, right? Where, and even for those that are listening, give this a shot. But like, if I had a magic wand and I completely wiped your memory immediately right now, and you had like literally zero memory. So you had no language to explain what you were experiencing. You had no memory of like your family. You don't know that this thing here is a table. This is a microphone. You don't know that you are a human being. You don't know who human beings are, nothing. All you are is you just are seeing stuff. We're just awareness in that moment. And in that moment, we lose our sense of self because it's fundamentally associated and created through memory. It requires memory, but we also lose all of our limitations and all of the things that we've bought into that we can't do.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I see this all the time with my clients. And once again, this is why I am committed to serving the fitness industry, is that because of, once again, the frequency and the relational depth, we have a huge amount of impact and a huge opportunity to really help people and like front lines of healthcare, you know? And because we learn, human beings, we learn through experience. We learn through the things that we do And if they go well, if they go poorly, if they go neutral, we learn through the messages that we receive from our family, our physicians, and all that stuff informs the things that we dare to do. And
Yeah.
what's really cool that personal trainers get to do is we get to curate scenarios. It sounds kind of a weird thing when you think of training, but we get to curate environments and scenarios where you encourage people to push up against some of those limits.
Yeah.
And we have no idea where that will take them. And I'm rambling here, but I'll give you a
No, you're not.
concrete
No.
example of like, I have one client that I'm still currently working with, and she has a connective tissue disorder. So she's hypermobile.
Ehlers-Danlos?
So they initially thought it was EDS. It's actually Stickler's, which is like a more rare connective tissue disorder, but it's essentially manifests as like the same kind of tendency of like joint hypermobility, challenges with spatial awareness, coordination, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so she, since younger, she would get injured a lot because of this.
Yeah.
B, she received a whole bunch of really catastrophic information from her health team.
Yeah.
They were trying to keep her safe. They're telling her, careful, don't do these things, don't lift more than XYZ amount because you can't, or there's a risk of you getting injured. And so when we started working together, and she did a Romanian deadlift, like a hip hinge kind of a thing where you like hinge forward and come back up. Initially, we did that with a broomstick, and then it was like one of the lighter barbells. I think we did one with a band at one point, and then she lifted the barbell. And I didn't tell her how much the barbell was. As you know, the barbells are 45 pounds or 20 kilos, 44 pounds, depending on where you are in the world. And she had a moment of, and I won't curse, but she was like, what the F? I was told that to never lift more than 10 pounds. I just lifted like 450% of what I was told to never lift more. I did it for, let's say it was like 2 sets of 8 or 10. It was relatively effortless. Like, what does that say about who I am and what I'm capable of, right? And it has created, it interrupted this vicious cycle that was present, which was like what we call like a kinesiophobic spiral, which is like fear of getting injured leads to doing less. And it just kind of, it's an avoidance cycle.
Yeah.
And that moment for her was quite literally transformative because she was like, well, what else can I do? Right. And it's a question mark that has broadened her horizons in a manner that we couldn't have anticipated. And like she's deadlifted more than her body weight. So like 180-ish pounds for like multiple sets, multiple reps.
Yeah.
She loves powerlifting. And this is someone who has, physical disabilities, right? So that's the transformative power of personal training.
For sure. And like challenging the narratives that we have within ourselves and the narratives that other people are telling you too. And I think like it also just speaks to the fact that there are so many opinions out there. And, even us and the biases that we have, the things that we're telling you, like, don't just take what I'm saying right away. Like you need to, diversify the opinions you're exposing yourself to and try new things and don't necessarily accept limits that other people are placing upon you when you already have to deal with the limits you're placing on yourself and the signals that your body is giving you, right? Like you're in pain and you're immediately assuming, I can't move there, I can't do this, everything's gonna hurt, I really can't challenge myself that much before things start hurting and whatnot. I'm curious about how you approach teaching people about pain in a way that empowers them instead of pushing them towards fear. Like what do you offer as an explanation for someone who's like, I can't do that. I will get hurt. I'm afraid this is going to hurt. It already hurts now. You're making me do it. And it still hurts. And then also they're inflamed after they do it. So how do you approach situations like that? I'm sure it's like different for different people and what diagnoses they have. But I guess starting with the fear, kinesiophobia, and pain.
Yeah. So I mean, where I would start with a client is very similar to where I would start with a trainer if ever we're having like one of these conversations. And it's about explaining people that there is not a causal link between the experience of pain and tissue damage. And there isn't a causal link between the amount that you feel and the amount of tissue damage. So like it's correlative at best. You can have agony in the absence of pain. We see that often, especially within one specific diagnosis or category of people, which is people who have received the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. You see it often within those folks. And then you also have people who are the opposite, which is the vast majority of us, which is that we're walking around and internally, orthopedically, things are not perfect. Things are not quote unquote pristine as they were when we were younger, and we're completely asymptomatic. So you can have a whole bunch of stuff happening internally and feel completely fine and live a life that is unhindered by pain, that is fulfilling. And also the opposite is true, which you can be completely fine internally and be in total agony.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing that I encourage people to really kind of like understand, is that causal link, it's not that it's like weak, it's that it doesn't exist. And then the second piece to that is there's a definition of pain by Lorimer Moseley, who's like one of the foremost researchers on pain. Like if you Google pain neuroscience, his name's going to come up for sure. And he talks about how pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated to actual or potential tissue damage. I have this memorized because I've taught this a million times.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really cool in that quote is that he says that pain is associated, not caused by. So that's a really important word in that definition. And he also talks about how pain is associated to actual or potential tissue damage. Potential is a really important word.
Yeah.
Potential means future oriented. So pain in many ways, unless there's like an acute moment where your body's injured, you get hit by something, or you roll your ankle catastrophically while you're going hiking or what have you. The vast majority of the pain that people will experience is anticipative in nature. It's because the body's predicting that damage will occur if we continue along this path. And so pain is something that the body creates. That's another important distinction, as a means of altering behavior. So pain isn't something that happens to you. It's something your body does as a self-preservational behavior. And so if you think about it through that lens, it's actually far less catastrophic than hurt equals harm. And getting
Pain itself compared to, because I think people have a really hard time uncoupling the pain from the injury, if that makes sense. And that like they automatically assume, oh, there has been an injury here, and thus if I continue doing this activity where this pain originated from, I am damaging myself and will damage myself, compared to having tissue damage that also is coupled with pain, because the two can happen separately.
Yeah, and experiencing sensitivity or discomfort is a normal biological response to any kind of novelty. If your training volume goes up too quickly, or if you're trying a new exercise, it's a normal thing to experience. It's not a sign that anything's necessarily wrong. It's a whoa sign. It's not a stop sign, right? And so it's far less catastrophic than we're told. One of the things that you and I talked about before recording was like, what's something that I've like changed my mind about during my career? This is it, which is like at the beginning, I used to think, oh, like people hurt. So like, how are they biomechanically compromised? And how am I going to use my biomechanical understanding to change tissue and joint stuff so that they hurt less? And those approaches usually helped, but it's not because they necessarily are altering something biomechanical that leads to them hurting less. It's just because of like variation or good coaching or what have you. And so like the fundamental reframe is that, how would I say, it's kind of funny. Like you think of, there are other like mechanical entities like a car where like if something goes wrong, something's wrong with an alternator, you fix it, the problem's done. We apply that same kind of mechanical logic in physiotherapy, chiro, not necessarily still to this day. There's like things are
developments,
and things are changing a lot right now. Like people are really, there's a greater appreciation of this knowledge now more so than ever. But we still have this mechanical bias. which we don't want to throw it out. Like it's a part of who we are. There are mechanical contributions, but we forget about
Yes.
like the bio piece. Like we're biomechanical. And when
Yes.
we start to consider like the nuances of human biology, and its relationship to pain or dysfunction, it's not as simple and causal as problem and then something proportionate mechanically going on. There's a lot more there, like expectation,
Yeah.
conditioning. From a young age, were you told that you were fragile and broken, or were you told from a young age, like, yeah, go for it, and you scrape your knee, dust it off, you're fine? Two completely different human beings,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and
It's like when a kid falls and everyone's like, "Oh," and they start crying right
they
away.
usually will look to their guardian. How
Yeah.
damaged am I? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Clients, you guys do that too,
All the
which is
time.
like something will happen, and you'll look to the trainer of like what happened, and like an important role of a fitness professional usually is like to
Yeah.
stay calm, because it
Yeah.
usually isn't catastrophic. And even if
Mm-hmm.
you're like a little bit sore for a day or two, your body knows what to do. You're going to heal, you're going to come back, you're totally fine. Like we are wear and repair organisms, not wear and tear,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Um, Something we get all the time is people who, will get injured, whether it's in the gym or outside. And they say, "Oh no, I'm seeing my chiro for a while. I'm seeing my physio for a while. Like I'm just going to do that
Yeah.
before I come back." And then you're sort of like, and then they don't come back for weeks, maybe
Hmm.
months, and we teach their own, whatever, if that's your coping strategy. Um, but then they become weaker, and then when they come back, things are hurting more and they weren't hurting before, and then they have a new idea in their head that, oh, maybe it was the strength training, maybe it was the lifting, or maybe it was this. How do you what's your response to people who are like, oh, I'm going to stop training for a while because I'm in pain, and I'll come back to it later when I'm not in pain?
Yeah. Once again, very nuanced. It really,
Yeah,
it
of
really,
course,
it really depends on
which is what
what
I
what
want.
people are experiencing. Like if it's like I had a client who I was working with remotely, who he hadn't played basketball for a while. He was playing basketball at the Ottawa gym, and then he tore his Achilles. And so we were like, okay, well, that really changes everything that we can do. Needless to say, he has great biceps now, because that's all we did, right? So what I would say is, I would say first and foremost, like depending on the severity of what someone's experiencing, if I think that there's a way to be concurrent, meaning that there'd be a way to continue to exercise for A, mental health, B, physiological health, and C, just to kind of like generally, it can help the body be less sensitive,
Yes.
locally and systemically. If I think that that would be appropriate for them, once again, this is where the nuance of the injury comes into play.
Of
But if
course.
I
Yeah.
think it would be appropriate, I'll tell the client that first and foremost. I'll be like I totally understand and actually support that you want to go see this person. My recommendation would be that we don't take our foot off the gas entirely, but that we just like decrease your frequency, because you're going to be adding some of these other appointments. Maybe there's a financial load associated to that, and so like let's dial it back and let's do things
Yeah.
concurrently.
Yeah.
In my experience, and this is the truth, clients respond better to that. So that's where the conversation would start. If they're open to that, then I will ask them to connect me with their health team. So if they're going to be seeing a physio, a chiro, etc., I start a dialogue with them, so that way we can ensure that there's synergy between our two approaches. So I'll ask them, do their assessment, get back to me, let me know what you find, let me know if there's things that you want us to do, not do, etc. And so we have a dialogue of how we can, how would I say, synergistically and working together, like move the client forward in a faster manner, in contrast to there being conflict between what I'm trying to do and what the other health professional is trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's if the client's open to it. If the client's not open to it, then that's their decision.
Wah, wah,
That's
wah.
their
Yeah.
decision, and say,
It is.
okay, great. And no problem. I respect your decision. It's their life ultimately, right?
It's true.
And then what I would say is I would have an agreed upon date that we would connect again, so that way people don't fall off the face of the earth, because that also happens. There's other challenges and obligations in life that can get in the way. And I think it's called the Eisenhower matrix. Have you ever heard of this before? Where it's like
Mm.
you have important, not important in the
Yes.
y-axis, and urgent,
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
urgent
Yeah.
on x.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's things that fall into the like urgent, high importance. Like
Yeah.
I just got injured, I need to go see someone for care. Naturally, it's understandable that people would really prioritize that. Urgent and
Yes.
important, time sensitive, etc. Exercise, the reason why it's discarded by so many people is that it doesn't fall into the category of urgent and important. It's in the category of important and completely non-urgent. Because
Yes.
it truly, in many ways, it actually doesn't matter if you miss a week or two of training, or even honestly, if you miss a month. It's not a big deal over the course of your life. If you
Yes.
zoom out,
Yeah.
it's a blip in the radar. It actually doesn't matter. For better or worse, right? You can work out for just a month, it doesn't matter. You can not work out for a month, it doesn't matter. It really, like, what matters more are the trends.
Overall consistency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about in terms of, like, let's say there's a client who has an injury and they want to go see another physician or what have you, or a health professional, and they don't want to continue training, then I would say, no problem. When are we going to connect next? And so maybe we have a phone call booked, or I know right now, no, not right, we aren't in the Glebe right now. But if we were, I would say, great, let's meet up at the Starbucks next door in
Yeah.
3 weeks. Let's take an appointment. Let's grab a coffee and let's talk. Like,
Yeah.
how have things been going? How are you feeling? When would you like to resume? And just kind of like having that touch point, I think, has been really important. So that
Yeah.
way people don't lose touch with this thing that's important but not urgent.
Yeah, and and like you said, it's the long term that matters, and giving yourself grace and space to heal, and
100%.
making sure that you're staying in line with your values. I'm curious about this is a little bit more niche in the fitness industry as a whole, but there's a huge debate going on about functional training and form and being super perfect with technique, whatever that might mean to you, textbook, compared to being more of a movement optimist, where you're like, all movement is good. Movement that you are not prepared for is not as good, but it is information. And, there's no bad technique. It's just technique that you're not prepared for. And all that tissues know is load, and all that your body knows to respond to is force application, which I do agree with. And not to say that form doesn't matter, but where would you say you fall in the spectrum? And how do people sort of balance the idea of not fearing pain and not fearing different kinds of movement, or not having textbook form, while still working towards good technique?
I mean, I'm definitely in the movement optimism camp,
Camp.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm like a card carrying member of movement optimism.
Yeah.
Not only because it seems to be true when we look at the research available associated to pain and injury, et cetera. Like, there isn't one objectively right way to move across the board on the planet. That being said, it doesn't mean that there aren't quote unquote right or better ways that might provoke more or less pain for people, but that's an N of one decision, right? So if you and I are working together, we might find that there's certain things that your body is currently sensitive to right now, that we may, based on your goals, maybe we choose to avoid them and triple down on something else, or maybe we choose to do a little bit of graded exposure to desensitize those positions or to build you up in those positions, right?
Yeah.
That's an N of one decision, though. That's not a objectively. There's just one way
Yeah.
to move.
Yeah, agreed. And it's tough because you're sort of dancing between, okay, well, this is the textbook form that most of the time I will coach. If you have some variation here or there, we're going to target this muscle a little bit more versus, or these fibers of this muscle a little bit more.
Can I jump in? And
Yeah.
this is what you're talking about. This is where form does matter.
Yeah.
If we're thinking about form as a means of mitigating injury risk across the board, that's less relevant than people think. That's a load management discussion, usually.
Yeah.
Not just from a tissue perspective, but also earlier we were talking about the body's kind of predictive tendencies that are future oriented with pain. it also applies to that. Meaning, if you, let's say you go through a traumatic injury, and if I lose my train of thought, bring me back by saying like, when does form matter, and mention biomechanics, because I might get lost here. So if someone has an injury and the area is then sensitive, as you load it, you're not only loading the tissues and building up the tissues, but you're essentially providing a stimulus to the person's nervous system. And the nervous system is learning through experience whether or not it needs to continue to protect at that level of stress, or whether or not it can relax a little bit and give you access to more. So the graded exposure piece applies to tissue, but it also applies to the body's kind of predictive tendencies and at what point it creates pain to keep you safe.
Right. I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. What that means is that, let's say you're doing a squat or a deadlift or something, and one day the range of motion that you're using hurts, but you can get away with it. And then maybe a couple days later, you try it again. The nervous system will adapt and allow you to move into that position with less or no pain.
So long as you don't do too much, too fast,
too fast, too soon, or too frequently, or
the cardinal rules of rehab. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then thank you for clarifying that. That was really great. And then if we think of, when does form matter? Form really matters when you're looking to elicit very specific tissue adaptations. So it is true that like not every row, not every pull down, not every squat, not every lunge are made the same, in the sense that they do stimulate tissues differently. And so if you have a body composition goal, or a physique goal, or if you're a rock climber, or if you run, or what have you, and you want to load specific tissues to be more tolerant to the very real stressors associated with sport, you're going to want to choose exercises that are actually going to load those tissues. That's when technique really matters. Like, technique really, really, really matters when it comes to making decisions of which tissues do we want to load. Like, that is unavoidable for sure.
Yeah. So it's like, it goes back to asking the question of what your goal is and the importance of that, because it helps us decode, like, okay, what form are we going to use? What technique are we going to use? And within the realm of something like functional training, where someone's like, oh, I want to train in a functional way, I want to move in a way that I do in real life. Okay, we can give you a program where you're moving in any direction, maybe directions that are uncomfortable for you, and we can make you more resilient in that fashion. Or, say you want to blow up one part of your glutes, you're going to pick a specific lunge. That's it. That's all you want to do.
It. The upper fibers of glute max. That's it.
That's the only thing that matters, really.
We've actually, you and I, we're letting the listeners in on the secret that you and I have consulted on this very objective, because you just want to have a huge upper glute.
That is it. That's my only
letting
goal.
people in on your little secret.
My dirty secrets,
That's right.
Yeah, it's true. But all of that to say is, we are choosing exercises based on, well, it depends on, whether you come in with like, oh, I want to feel better. Hey, this is a general leg exercise that'll target all parts of your leg, all parts of your glutes, in a relatively balanced fashion, compared to saying, like, with the upper glute example, you want to choose an exercise that will target that more specifically. So, and that is the same for pain management as well, and rehab as well. We want to choose something that will target the tissues that will help strengthen and support your joints, without triggering to a degree of unrecoverable extent.
Yeah, and also choosing exercises that may expose the body to movements, positions, loads, and sensations that currently have a danger label on them. So things that the body is just not tolerant to. And this is actually where, I was talking with someone not long ago, like, where do plyometrics fall in with rehabilitation? And usually I put them further along the line, usually just because plyos tend to be high load and speed tends to be provocative for people. But like, there's a time and place where, like, if someone has done nothing but slow rehabilitation, really focused work, they may find that there's still a little bit of caution and apprehension associated with speed. And so going and exploring speed in a controlled setting can unlock, greater ease of movement in day-to-day life. So yes, what you said about tissues, very correct. Good job. And also there's the other added benefit of just like, what is the body's perception of danger, and how
Yes.
can we, through graded exposure, make the body feel a little bit safer in its environment.
Which increases resilience overall,
Yeah.
meaning that you can experience pain and experience stressors and not have as much of a dramatic reaction to it as you maybe once
Yeah.
did, which is one of the largest parts and benefits of exercise that people don't talk about. I think it's like, I feel like they think about strength in a vacuum compared to what that means for your overall life. Like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe you can lift a heavier box, but that also means that lifting, 2, 3 of those boxes multiple times doesn't make you as fatigued as it once did. And that speaks volumes for what you have energy for in the rest of your
I
life.
love this topic. I find that until you have an idea of what that freedom feels like,
Yeah.
you have no idea what you're missing. And
Yes.
recently, like within the last year, I slid backwards within the context of how strong I am now in comparison to before. And I felt the ramifications of that,
Oh, yeah.
to kind of keep this really short. I was training. I not only had the marathon in 2023, I had another one in 2024. Was it 2024? No, 2025. I had a trail event, within the last 4 months. And during that, I had to run a ton. And when you run a ton, you accumulate a lot of fatigue. And so I just didn't have the resources to be able to accumulate the training volume for strength training that
Yeah.
I would have in the past. The result of that, and this was a conscious decision, is that there was a trade that was made. I'm choosing to trade to build the aerobic engine. I'm choosing to compromise my strength. And I've never, it was weird, like little things, like I'd be like trying to like open stuff at home or like doing tasks. And I'm not a weak guy, but like
Yeah.
I felt like my hands hurting when I would be doing different things, or
Yeah.
and like, yeah, sure, I'm older, but like we can't explain the huge change in symptoms that I was experiencing by just age.
For sure.
And and so, I think I've been very blessed and experiencing like ease, and then also within essentially a year and a half, noticing a huge change in my maximum strength and the negative ripple effects on my life. I was able to experience that very intimately during the past like
Yeah.
year. And that's why, like right now, since we moved back to Canada, a big part of my personal objectives is to get stronger again, because like I don't like the added effort that life now has
Yeah.
as a result of decreased muscular strength. So
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure, you're
Which
totally right.
again goes back to goals, priorities. What goal are you trying to serve right now? And life happens in seasons, and you don't need to do everything all at
Good point.
once. And yeah, I think in general, I'm like glad with how much this conversation has gone back to the importance of like sitting down about what you want, what you're willing to do to get it, what you have space to do, what you have space for in your life to do. Um, yeah, and just the power of consistency and having a presence of mind about, as a trainer and as a client, about what you want and what you're willing to do, and sort of smashing your own imposed barriers, the barriers that other people put upon you. And yeah,
Can I share a story with you before we wrap up?
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So this past weekend, my wife's family from Quebec came to visit us. It was their first visit to my wife and I's new house here in Ottawa. And I had a conversation with my father-in-law that I think might be kind of an interesting place to wrap up, because he was talking about how over the past 2 years, how his physical capacity has regressed a lot. And I think he's around 60, I think he's around 60, 65 at this point. Kicking myself for not knowing his age,
Nah.
but anyways, he's like mid 60s, and he shared with me, he's like, I know that exercise is good for me, but I have so much trouble getting myself to do it. What would be your recommendation for me? This is literally a conversation that we had this past weekend. And what I shared with him is I said, I want you to reflect on the very real, predictable outcome or outcomes associated with you not finding a way to incorporate more physical activity in your life. He's someone who like loves gardening. He loves mountaineering. He's a very, very active man. And he's noticed how his lack of like his body getting weaker in time is starting to like impede and constrict his ability to do the things that he loves in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, what's your recommendation? And I was like, well, like just examine the very real predictable consequences associated with not finding a way and being stubborn of integrating physical activity in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it also come back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's not something that needs to be big. Like literally, if you're not doing anything right now, anything is a huge jump. And
Yeah.
people say that a lot, and we might discard that or disregard it as being like, yeah, but there's an ideal way. It's like, sure, and there might be an ideal that we could strive towards, but fundamentally, it's about just taking a step. And that first step doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't need to be perfect. It could be a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute workout, right?
Uh-huh.
A little shout out to Freeform. It doesn't need to be a 2-hour session for it
Yeah.
to be adequate to nudge the needle in your life. So
So true. So true. Which speaks to the fact that you have no idea what you're capable of until you try, and where the limits are. And so much of it is trial and error and experimentation and self-examination. And it's fun. It doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be this terrifying, dramatic process that is completely informed by, the health and wellness gurus that prescribe like these perfect lifestyles all over social media.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part of it. It's like just start somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I want to know before we close off, what is a habit, a personal habit or thing that you swear by that supports your goals that you do now? And I know it is a lifestyle thing, it's a general thing, but is there anything that comes to mind immediately that you feel like
Yeah.
pushes you
Two
along?
things. The first is that when I make my schedule for the week, the first thing that goes in is my training, my personal training for myself. So there are some exceptions to it, but generally speaking, Monday to Friday from 7 to 10 a.m., I don't take any appointments. That's time for me, and I go, I train. I have 3 hours to train, eat, chill, whatever. That's time for me, and I only start taking appointments as of 10 a.m. There's exceptions to that. So if my clients hear this, they'll be like, "That's not true." I know
Ah,
it's not an absolute rule. It's something that I aspire
you
to.
should feel special,
That's right. Yeah,
actually.
you should feel absolutely very special. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that goes in my calendar because I know that's important, not urgent. I know that it will be discarded, and I have a tendency to put a whole bunch of other people before myself, whether it be my family, my especially my clients and my work. And
So true.
so I put the thing that I know is really important and needs to be done consistently. I put that in first. And then honestly, the other thing that is a habit that like really helps kind of like, I don't know, keep me in line in life is reading. I try to read every day. I don't, like when you came and got me in the lobby, I don't know if you saw, I had a book in.
I
Yeah.
did
So,
see.
so I find that if I don't intentionally read regularly, I don't know, my mind gets hijacked by all of
Yeah.
the stuff on the grams and the Facebooks
So
and stuff.
true.
So
Yeah.
I
So
find
easy.
connecting with good books is really important.
Yeah. And I think reconnecting with that, committing to one thing where you're really going in depth and learning that thing compared to 30 seconds here, a short here, a minute here, and it's like monkey
Yeah.
brain. And it's so hard to absorb information that way. I find when you're taken through a narrative and an entire book, whether it's fiction or
Hmm.
nonfiction, you always learn something
Totally.
to a depth that's not as
Instagram can't
comparable
provide
to
it
bite sized. Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Instagram nightmare. Well, is there anything else that you want to plug out there? Plug yourself. Where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Sure.
Clients or gyms,
Yeah,
organizations?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll leave. So my personal page on Instagram, and we were just poo pooing it a little bit, but my personal page
Poo-poo.
on Instagram is @Asselin_official, and then the Instagram page for the organization is at the Exercise Mechanic on Instagram, or www.theexercisemechanic.com. If trainers in particular want to learn about the educational initiative and just want to become kick-ass at what they do, that's the target.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on. This was
Really
so
fun.
great. I really enjoyed this
Me too.
conversation. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you soon. Thank you. Bye.